Hello, everybody. How's it going today?
Awesome.
What's going on with all the crickets? So we're going to be talking about the future today. So if we're going to be talking about the future, I'd like to give yourselves a really big round of applause to welcome it. Come on, let's go now. Come on. Come on. Okay. All right, thank you. Main topic today is where is the next multi-trillion-dollar economy, right? You've been hearing a lot about blockchain as of late, but you know, the big question is, where is it, right? Where's all the major value? So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I'm Tony Tran, CEO and co-founder at Alfa Enzo Foundation. Oh, looks like it's dead. It's not working, excuse me 1 second. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Sorry about that. Let's move on. That's okay. You know, hiccups are normal. This is technology. So, before we talk about the future, let's talk about where we're at, right? You guys have been noticing how much the market has tanked. And I can assure you, this is a very, very normal thing. Because if we look at the Gartner hype cycle, oops, wrong direction, and the adoption life cycle, the one thing that we can infer from the market's action right now is that we're going through the trough of disillusionment, right? They call it the chasm. And there's, you know, Bitcoin, all these other altcoins, they have tanked. They have tanked because they're going through a period where the true use cases for some of these blockchain and some of these altcoins have not surfaced, right? Why? Because blockchain lacks a strong use case for everyday utility. I can't go out there and use blockchain yet, or actually I can't go out there and use crypto to buy a cup of coffee, right? Where is that? Where is the big revolution that we're all talking about? And so the main question is this, right? This is the biggest reason why we're seeing all these things today. Because cryptos have raised money, haven't been able to deliver, and now they've pulled out, right? And so leaving everybody else in the ecosystem. But this is still the main prevailing thought. And today, I want to share with you where this is going, and the biggest question, how to get rich. So, back in the early stages of the web, right? What did we see and what have we learned? What we have learned is that the main value creation, the main value drivers have been in the application side, right? And so the protocols, TCP, HTTP, all these things, nobody's making money off of that, right? Every time you go to a website, you're not earning a royalty on that. Why? Because when the internet and all the protocols were created, it was created with decentralization in mind. But over time, it was the application layer that took hold and have begun to essentially co-opt the powers of decentralization. And what we're left with now are social network gigantic companies, FAMGA, right? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. All these gigantic companies have walled themselves in and are now, and they've owned the application layer. And so what that means is this. This graph essentially says exactly what's going on. We've got 1% of everybody that's creating content, and 9% of them are actively lurking. Are actively commenting on blockchain, and the rest are actively looking. So, you know, this is the result of all those companies owning so much share of the market. So if we look at that in terms of blockchain, where do we go from here? The main value drivers in blockchain is going to be at the protocol layer. We're going to be seeing application layers shrinking, And we're going to be seeing the world bifurcating into two directions. On the one hand, you have blockchain, and on the other hand, you can have the continuation of just existing startups who are basically monetizing in the way they've always monetized, right, which is on the application layer. And so you notice that blockchain is actually all about context. It's about the distance between people. Whereas back in the days of the web, it wasn't about context, it was about content. And so where is the next big economy going to go? It's going to be in context. So we want to flip that around, right? We want to flip that triangle upside down. And here's the 100% rule of blockchain, because it activates all the entire value chains, right? So we have the power earners earning 90% of all of the activities that happen on the blockchain network, the active earners 9%, and the passive earners 1%. But everybody earns, and that's the true power of blockchain today. So what that sums up is that all content is no longer king. It's context that matters in the blockchain space. And crypto reward is not a strong way for us to mobilize context. We need something better. So let's take a look at the difference between existing networks, existing companies, and blockchain. See, in the days of social networking, it was all about connecting from one individual to another. And if you look at every single business that's out there, that still remains true. But in the blockchain space, it's really about connecting the vast interconnectedness between individuals, right? How do we mobilize that? And that's why the protocols are so important. It's about the distance between people. How do we bridge that gap? How do we bridge the gap between the physical and the digital divide? And that's the main key. And so here's a tip here are some of my insights that I've learned from the past 4 years of being in the space. First, you have to reason from first principle, not analogy. Don't go out there and build a clone of Facebook. Don't go out there and build a clone of Twitter and put it on the blockchain. That doesn't work. They're going to kill you. You have to think about it in terms of an MMorph, right? You can leverage blockchain for the first time to essentially turn the world around you into a massive multiplayer game. That's essentially what it is. I remember the days when I used to mine the Warhammers on World of Warcraft, right? And I spent countless hours mining them, and I have a really good collection. And people were buying them from me. And then after a year, nobody bought them anymore. It's useless, and that's exactly what we're seeing today. And so what you have to do is leverage existing blockchains that have proven themselves, Ethereum, Neo, Zem, to create a complete value chain. Think about that. Stop thinking about, oh, let me build my crypto to reward my users and hopefully raise some money in the process. No, I challenge everybody to kind of think beyond that and think how we can build things that are specific for blockchain and not a clone of existing fiat businesses. So what does that mean? That means that you have to design for context by creating entirely new worlds. And we're not talking about 3D worlds. I mean, you could go that direction. But what I'm talking about is thinking about design from the perspective of how do we propel the world into an entirely different experience using blockchain as a core focus. And so I'm going to show you exactly how that might look. Sorry?
Are you replacing out the laptop?
Yeah.
That one?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a beta of a project that we've been working on. It's called Alfa. And Alfa Enzo is the name of our company. But Alfa is essentially a different take, and here I'm going to demonstrate to you what thinking differently means for the blockchain. If you look at this, it looks just like a typical social network, correct? It's got a single directional scroll, and you're just basically looking through this the same way that you would a feed. Now, if you were to think about this in terms of blockchain, you wouldn't be thinking about this at all, because the blockchain is essentially a logging of things that happen in time. And so when we got started to building this, we looked at Facebook, we looked at all the other existing social networks, and we thought, well, how can we optimize this? How can we build a true social network that's designed specifically for the blockchain? And so if the blockchain is a recording in time, then we have to give users an ability to traverse time in the way that the blockchain has it. This way, horizontally. One tap takes you back to the present, one swipe takes you to the past or the future. Right? So if I were to time travel, I can go to any day, any month, any year, and be able to time travel. And so, you don't need to do anything else. You just basically scroll, right? Because the blockchain gives you the ability to tap into verifiable data points across the entire spectrum. And so if we were to design an experience on top of the blockchain, this is one way that we can go about doing that. And so what's interesting about the work that we're building, is that we are using time as an axis, similar to the way it is on the blockchain, but now the blockchain is deep, right? And so we're giving users an ability to go vertically in terms of location. And so essentially what we've done is we looked at the blockchain and we redefined essentially the aspect of the blockchain that matters, which is time, and the block height, which we're now using distance as a block height. And so essentially showing people what the blockchain looks like visually, right? One of the main things that the world has been talking about is how do we get to mass adoption? And you can't get to mass adoption if you can't put this in the hands of everybody to use in a social way and leverage the network effect to propel the experience that's on the blockchain. We have to hide all the complexities that is blockchain and give users all the benefits without them knowing that is in the blockchain, right? So all the security, the privacy that blockchain affords, we can hide all of the complexities behind that and just give them exactly what they need. And so that's how we arrived at our solution, which is to put a visual layer around the blockchain. And so you can do the same thing. You can do that with just about anything. If you change your perspective to, instead of building a clone of an existing business, to thinking about how might you build a gamified version of an existing business. And that's the key. Is there any question right now? Yes.
I mean, my only real thing is security, right? It's the only reason I would give like blockchain helps, especially with just this app, right?
Yep.
Wouldn't that because I think the regulation is really what keeps a lot of these things from perpetuating in the States, not overseas. But something like that, my first people brought Facebook already into the conversation. Knowing where you are in a certain point, place, and time, given that the blockchain is public, that would be my first beef with that. But I think it's beautiful. I think that app is right on. Probably one of the best things I've seen today.
Great, thank you. And I'll just take one question. Sorry, I was supposed to ask questions afterwards, but thanks very much for that. Yes, and so, the security that you can, when you look at blockchain from a security perspective, right, even though certain things are public, not all things have to be public, and that's the magic of everything, right? It's really about keeping the verifiable records confident, but exposing whatever you want out to the public. And so it's really in the hands of the users. And so what we essentially are building is an ecosystem where users have the full power to do as they please. So I'll go back. Oh yeah, it was playing through there. Yep. Okay, cool. So that was our demo, and just to show you exactly where we're going with this, right? How are we thinking about blockchain? Now,
Was there audio? Because I didn't hear any audio.
oh, no, there will be audio now, yes. So from that standpoint, how do we talk about we're talking about blockchain now. How do we show blockchain years from now when it might be something that's fully adopted? So we've created a small video for you to see the power of designing specifically for blockchain.
The theme of the fair was peace through understanding, and it was about the spirit of innovation. Good evening, madam.
What are my friends up to?
What you guys think? Is it good or what? And this can all happen when we really think about blockchain. The world is increasingly becoming that type of a world where if we build things correctly now, and we have a strong basis point working with blockchain technology, we can build incredibly immersive UI that sits on top of the blockchain without having to worry about the trust issues and the other issues that basically plague the internet of today. And so we can get closer to essentially a utopian world. And so you hear that a lot about how blockchain will decentralize global economies, right? I mean, if you've been to governments across the world, nobody's going to have that. I can guarantee you. The best way for us to get there is to really think about and juxtapose the distance between all of us as individuals. How do we work with smart contracts to enable for that to happen better? How do we use verifiable records on the blockchain to give us a better way to connect and transfer value between each other? And we do that slowly with interesting user experience designed specifically for the blockchain. And as long as you do that, one day we'll be seeing a world that's very close to the video that we've just shown. And so that was a very clear use case of exactly where we're going. And you can experience that today. If you look at the app and that video, we're not too far off. And that's the best part of technology is driven by the blockchain. And the main thing today is we want to announce that we are going to be bequeathing 5%, which is 1.5 billion Enzos, to university students worldwide through a consensus competition that we are building. And this competition is going to help to educate the entire education system, essentially, university students in particular, about blockchain, getting them on board. Because for many of you here, most of you might have experienced this exactly the way I experienced it, is that you don't know the power of blockchain until you begin to transfer tokens across wallets and watch it get verified on the network. That's only when you really know. But most students, they're not jumping onto that right now, and that's a major issue. And so what we want to do is begin this process, get them to learn about what consensus across the network means, and give them a way to essentially be a part of a major blockchain development. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.